Throughout this class, we found a gap in the literature, and we built a research study off of that specific gap. For me, I wanted my gap to be something special to me and something that I could relate to. So, I did my project on ADHD, also known as Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. This ADHD is apparent mostly in children. For some children, ADHD is a mental disorder that is able to be controlled with healthy living and habits. For some, medication and extra help in school is needed. ADHD can be outgrown by some individuals. However, for others, it carries into adulthood, like myself. In fact, while it is most commonly diagnosed in children, there are some adults with ADHD who go undiagnosed into adulthood. Kevin Egan and his colleagues state that college students with ADHD are a fast-growing group, with approximately 6% of college freshmen reporting that they have been diagnosed with the disorder. Herein lies our question. Are those 6% students who are over-reporting their symptoms in order to gain access to the external incentives provided to those with ADHD? Green and Rabner in 2012 explained that there is a growing concern over the possibility of college students faking the disorder in order to access the incentives that are offered to those with ADHD. Some of these incentives include medicines such as Vyvanse and Adderall, which alters the balance of chemicals in your brain and increases norepinephrine and dopamine levels. These medications help with focus. However, some side effects include weight loss and loss of appetite. These could also be certain reasons that students are seeking this diagnosis. Many students who are seeking an ADHD diagnosis for the external incentives have been found to overrate their symptoms, while students and individuals who actually have ADHD underrate their symptoms because they are embarrassed or they're shameful of them. Melissa Dvorsky and her colleagues state in relation to these thoughts of overrating and underrating, overall findings suggest that only parent ratings of ADHD met acceptable thresholds for both confirming and ruling out the presence of ADHD. So, the null hypothesis is that in analyzing the data, the researcher will find that the individuals diagnosed with ADHD by a psychologist or a psychiatrist will rate their symptoms much lower than their observers, while those who are not diagnosed will rate their symptoms much higher than their observers. The study design is a survey with volunteer self-selected participants. Participants will be students from the Nashville area in undergraduate schools. And also, they will have their observers, which could be a parent, a spouse, or a roommate, someone who spends a lot of time with them and knows how they work and how they function. The instruments used in this design would be the Conners Adult ADHD Rating Scales Self-Report Long Version and the Conners Adult ADHD Rating Scale Observer Long Version. Both of these would be used, one for the participant and one for their observer. Both scales are a 66-item self-report rating scale designed to measure DSM symptoms associated with ADHD. This scale is the most predominantly used in order to diagnose adults with ADHD, while there are other scales that are used to diagnose children, this is the most predominantly used for adults. After all of the data is collected, an independent group t-test would be run to look for statistical significance. The researcher hopes to find I hope to find more underrating evidence from those with ADHD and more overrating of symptoms from those who are seeking an ADHD diagnosis solely based on the external incentives. This was such a great project. I had so much fun learning about all the stats and learning about getting diagnosed. When I was diagnosed, I was way too young to remember, so this was really cool to go back and see it and understand it. It was a great project.